It's June 30th, and this is the evening edition of Mike and Bike. So a few random topics I guess we could cover tonight. First up is immigration. I got in an online debate on a blog I follow. It's the Global Economic Analysis, I think. It's by Niche Shedlock. And he had a post this weekend about that claimed that most of the new jobs in America in the last several years have gone to immigrants. And there were a bunch of statistics showing immigrants and jobs or immigration numbers and jobs. I wrote in a comment saying that I'm an immigrant and my startup was founded by immigrants and is completely employed by immigrants, and that I don't think we're stealing anybody's jobs. In fact, we're creating them. And boy, oh boy, did that get a lot of comments, replies. Basically, a lot of people were saying I am stealing American jobs, and my startup and all of us immigrants who are here, we work cheaper than Americans. This is American capital that we're using, which, but we could have done this just as easily in another country. And it's not like we actively said we weren't going to hire any Americans. Well, I mean, we're all legal immigrants. I'm a naturalized citizen. I don't know. It just feels somehow offensive to have these people saying that I'm stealing jobs and my software company is denying jobs to Americans because we've been hiring immigrants. There was never a policy to just hire immigrants. It just kind of worked out that way. And some of the best people we've interviewed were Americans, and so were some of the worst. Or when I say Americans, I mean like native-born Americans, I suppose. But when it came to salary demands and pertinent skills for the things that we're doing, it just turned out that these immigrants were the best fit for what we needed. And this kind of company can be made anywhere. Heck, one of our biggest competitors is based in Vancouver, Canada. We could have done this there or anywhere else. Most of our customers are in emerging markets who really like the cloud solutions for software engineers that we build. It has more appeal over there than to American software engineers who sometimes have better infrastructures in their own companies, whereas some of these developers in emerging markets don't have that to rely on. But yet, there's people out there who want to harangue me for somehow wrecking the American economy and gutting it of jobs. I don't know. Sometimes I think it's just the narrow-mindedness of people. Of course, that's not just an American phenomenon. Lots of countries have large constituencies of people who want to stop the immigrants lots of anti-immigrant movements, let's put it that way. And all these anti-immigrant movements somehow feel that if they could just keep these unwanteds out, there would be more jobs for everybody else. Crazy, crazy, crazy. So, another subject that comes to mind is more about the Mormon church. I just really got fascinated by this whole thing with Kate Kelly and Kate Kelly's excommunication last week, and started reading a lot of articles in the Mormon blogosphere. They call it the blogernacle. A whole bunch of different Mormons who have blogs. Very fascinating. Well, fascinating for someone who used to be in the faith, anyway. It's clear that there is a palpable fear running through a huge number of these Mormon bloggers of being excommunicated. And quite a number of them in recent weeks have received, or actually the last few months have received notices from the church, from their church leaders, that there are proceedings against them, and that they need to talk with their leaders about their activities and stuff. So it seems like quite a few of these people are in the process of being expelled from the official church. What's interesting is that a lot of these people don't seem to mind. And they publish everything that's going on with them in great detail. All the letters they receive from church leaders, their responses and everything. And frankly, I think that kind of attitude pretty much guarantees they're going to be expelled from the church. Mormon church leaders like deference and respect, and when you're airing all this stuff publicly, certainly doesn't give across any perception of deference and respect. I mean, I assume these people realize that. In a certain sense, I think there's a whole lot of these Mormon bloggers are almost like egging the church on to get rid of them. In this respect, I think that the Mormon church is a little immature, because you can't just excise all your critics. The Catholic Church, for instance, is way more mature on that level. They don't excommunicate people for advocating for women in the priesthood or gay marriage or even for contraception. Catholic Church doesn't change its mind or its policies in these areas, but neither do they go about excommunicating their members who challenge it and its positions. And the Mormon church is pretty much, well, they say it's fine. The way the church phrases their policies is so precious. They say that it's fine to have disagreements and questions and doubts, but it's the tone in which you pursue them. What it really means is fine for you to have your own questions as long as you don't bring them out in public. If you do that, then you've crossed the line. And so in reading a lot of these Mormon blogs, I've been learning lots of interesting things that I hadn't realized about the church or its history in particular. Lots of little fascinating tidbits. But I should stress, this does not make me anti-Mormon at all. If anything, I think it gives an even richer view of the Mormon history, more for me to dig into and learn about. It also reminds me of how hard it is sometimes to know what the truth is, the quote-unquote truth of history is. It isn't even clear. The more I read about it, the more I see there's even disagreement about polygamy in the church. Officially, the LDS Church acknowledges its polygamous past. And to this day, the LDS Church even has theology that believes that polygamy is something that will exist in the afterlife, just not in this life, not in the temporal world. But they haven't really totally gotten rid of the idea of polygamy. That's actually the official view of the church. What I found surprising was to read about some people who claim that the early church leaders, even with Joseph Smith, didn't believe in polygamy. That is actually an invention of people like Brigham Young, who succeeded Joseph Smith, or succeeded him. I don't know, it's hard for me to tell. They make a fairly good case. They point out that Joseph Smith made a lot of very public statements about the evils of polygamy, that he excommunicated some members for having polygamous relationships. And they claim that many of these women who later claimed that he had been their husband, a polygamous husband, may have had reasons to lie about it, if for no other reason than to justify their own polygamous marriages with other people. Because by backing up the claims that Joseph Smith was a polygamist, that then legitimized their relationships. But the end result is that I don't know what's true. The actual scripture in the Mormon Doctrine and Covenants, chapter 132, I think, that talks about polygamy and says that this is one of God's principles, was apparently not added to the Doctrine and Covenants till after Joseph Smith's death. And the official LDS Church doesn't even deny that. But the story goes, the official story is that this actually was prophecy from Joseph Smith, but it was kept secret until later. Like, kept in the proverbial drawer, because it wasn't God didn't feel it was ready to be made public yet. But it makes one wonder, I mean, if it wasn't actually an official thing prior to the prophet's death, to Joseph's death, and if it wasn't something he ever talked about publicly, then it certainly leads a lot of questions. And the only real public statements we have from Joseph Smith are ones where he condemns polygamy. So, like I say, it's an interesting case, an argument, one I'd never heard before. And I have no idea as to the veracity of it or not. I just don't know. I mean, to counter that, you've got all of these women who signed affidavits and gave testimonies that they were wives of Joseph Smith. So, I mean, that's hard to argue with. But then you counter that with at least the claim of some of the articles I was reading that DNA tests haven't shown that there's any relation between the offspring, the descendants of these women who were polygamous wives of Joseph Smith and Joseph Smith. So it's confusing. There's a lot of articles that I was reading on the blogernacle about people complaining about the corporate church and how the Mormon church is really run like a business, very organized, very hierarchical, and it had become more so as the years went on. And there's lots of complaints about the church's investments. Like one common critique is about the Salt Palace or Salt Center, with some big shopping center in Salt Lake City that apparently cost over $1 billion or something, and it's all financed by the church. And people are saying, you know, why is the church investing in expensive real estate development projects, particularly things aimed at selling high-priced goods to the rich? You know, I won't disagree with that. I mean, that's a valid criticism. But I do wonder about all the complaints of the corporate church. In some senses, it is the very business-like ways of the LDS church that have made it so successful. Certainly compared to many other branches of the Mormon church that have split off over the years. And there's quite a few Mormon churches when you really start digging into it. At various times had disagreements on faith and on doctrine and split off. Way back to the time when Joseph Smith died, some of the saints never believed that Brigham Young should be their leader. It's kind of the same thing as the Muslims experienced when Muhammad died, I guess. Except the Mormons never actually had a war amongst each other. So, I don't know if it's such a bad thing that the Mormon church became very corporate, or the LDS church became corporate. It allowed them to build an efficient global organization that was really good at selling the gospel. They're up to something like 15 million members now. Yeah, it's way and above ahead of any of the other Mormon sects. But I guess size isn't everything. And if you feel that the distance that there is in the church hierarchy and the unresponsiveness to local needs is a problem for you, then I guess having a big church isn't so good. Yeah, I think religion is a very fascinating thing. And again, I should stress I am not trying to knock on Mormons. I mean, any more than anybody else. And I really want to emphasize I admire a whole heck of a lot about Mormon culture and even the Mormon church and the good things it does. As I think I've said in other episodes, I really miss that sense of community and of helping one another that I had in the Mormon church. It was very powerful. I loved being a home teacher where I was given a partner and given the responsibility of checking in on several families every month to see how they were doing and help them if they needed. Helping with yard work, fixing their homes, whatever. Helping when somebody gets sick or ill. I really enjoyed that. Felt good about doing that. Although, it's interesting that some Mormon bloggers turned the home teaching upside down and claim it's another mechanism that the church uses to control people and exert its control on the family home and the household. I suppose, and I know I can say for myself, that wasn't what I was trying to do. But I really do have a problem with some of the things that their leaders say. I think one of the recent things that's bugged me the most was some speech given by an Elder Oaks, I think, or is it Oates? I can't remember which. I think Oates, where he was saying that that not all truth is helpful, and that historians should censor themselves and not write about things that are just pulling people down and could be harmful to faith. I mean, this to me is like, how can the truth be bad? And an example that he gave was that if he was reading a biography of one of America's founding fathers, and he doesn't want to read about affairs they may have had when they were young men or something. But why not? I mean, that's part of the whole person learning about it. So what if George Washington had an affair? I don't know if he did, I really don't, but let's say he did. It wouldn't bother me to read about it in a book. If it's true, then let's hear it. And if people's faith is so fragile that it can fall apart from the truth, then was it really faith anyway? I don't know. I definitely think it would be wrong for historians to fabricate things. God knows that's happened enough. But I don't see that it's a good or or desirable thing to keep the truth from everyone either. And that brings us to the end of this edition of Mike and Bike. See you tomorrow.